Welcome to another edition of Numero Studio. In this video, we will talk about conditional statements. A conditional statement is one that can be written in the form if P then Q, where P is the hypothesis and Q is the conclusion. In symbols, this is written as P arrow Q. Notice that the arrow is directed from the hypothesis to the conclusion. And this is the case even if the conditional is written in other forms. So what are the forms of the conditional P arrow Q? For the purpose of this discussion, we will use the proposition "it is raining" for P, or the hypothesis, and the proposition "the ground is wet" for Q, or the conclusion. Like mentioned, the conditional can be written in the form if P then Q. When translated, we have if it is raining, then the ground is wet. Notice the positions of the hypothesis and the conclusion using this form. Next is the form Q if P. Written in this form, we say the ground is wet if it is raining. Notice that even if the propositions were rearranged, the word if still introduces the hypothesis and so will still be translated as P arrow Q. Next is the form P is a necessary condition for Q. Notice that when this form is used, the subject is where your hypothesis is and the conclusion is in the predicate. So for the statement "raining is a necessary condition for the ground to be wet," these are where your hypothesis and conclusion are located. The fourth form of P arrow Q is Q is a sufficient condition for P. When this phrase is used, the conclusion becomes the subject and you will see the hypothesis in the predicate. So in the statement, "the ground being wet is a sufficient condition for raining," these are where your hypothesis and conclusion are located, and this will still be translated as P arrow Q. Now, there are other forms of the conditional, such as these, and they are all translated to P arrow Q symbolically. Now, I'd like to highlight that in their daily usage, the phrases "is a necessary condition" and "is a sufficient condition" may be used interchangeably, but that is not the case in the world of logic. Still in the conditionals, we can derive other conditionals by interchanging the hypothesis and the conclusion or forming their negations. So the converse of a conditional is in the form if Q then P. The inverse is in the form if not P then not Q. And finally, the contrapositive is in the form if not Q then not P. Using the propositions we used earlier, let's derive the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of the conditional "if it is raining, then the ground is wet." And by the way, notice that we are beginning with a true statement. The converse of the above statement is "if the ground is wet, then it is raining." If we examine the statement, we notice that this is a false statement. The ground being wet doesn't necessarily mean it is raining. The inverse now states that if it is not raining, then the ground is not wet. Is this a true or false statement? Now, this is a false statement. The ground can still be wet even if it doesn't rain. The contrapositive of the given conditional is stated as "if the ground is not wet, then it is not raining." This is a true statement. Since the ground is dry, this means that it did not rain. Notice how the conditional and its contrapositive and the converse and the inverse have the same truth values. This is because these pairs of statements are logically equivalent. That is, they will always have the same truth values. To summarize, all of the statements shown are translated to P♯Q, and these are the derived forms of a conditional statement. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. Make sure to subscribe and get notified for the next videos. See you in the next one.